It's not funny, Bart. Millions of girls will grow up thinking that this is the right way to act.
Was the remarkably sexist drivel spouted by Malibu Stacy intentional, or is it just a horrible mistake?
Lisa, ordinarily I'd say you should stand up for what you believe in, but you've been doing that an awful lot lately.
The internet has a habit of finding meaning in chaos, but every now and then the chaos starts to feel intentional, like someone out there saw it all coming.
No, Celeste. I mean, the things she says are sexist.
And when it comes to Rachel Zegler, fans are convinced The Simpsons might have beaten us to the punch. Yes, that's Simpsons, the one that predicted everything from Trump's presidency to Disney's empire building. And now, viewers are pulling out dusty old episodes and claiming they found something terrifyingly familiar.
A hush falls over the General Assembly as Stacy approaches the podium to deliver what will no doubt be a stirring and memorable address.
I wish they taught shopping in school.
An animated warning about the downfall of a modern-day princess, long before the Snow White reboot went nuclear. It sounds ridiculous, right? But here's the thing. It's just plausible enough to get people talking. Because when Rachel Zegler's career started unraveling in real time, it wasn't just critics and tabloids dissecting her every move. It was meme pages, Reddit sleuths, TikTok theorists, and one specific Simpsons episode suddenly got dragged into the spotlight, not for laughs, but for what some fans are calling a mirror of everything that just went wrong.
Let's bake some cookies for the boys.
Come on, Stacy. I've waited my whole life to hear you speak. Don't you have anything relevant to say?
People aren't just saying she fumbled Snow White. They're saying The Simpsons called it. The ego, the backlash, the attitude, even the idea of trying to fix a fairy tale and ending up in hot water with the very audience you were trying to impress. And once you see the comparison, it's hard to shake, because there's one particular storyline buried deep in the archives that shows a young woman trying to reshape a beloved character, only to spark outrage, confusion, and a total public meltdown.
It's not funny, Bart. Millions of girls will grow up thinking that this is the right way to act.
Sound familiar? And here's where it gets wild. That episode didn't air last year, or last decade. It aired in 1994, over 2 decades before Rachel Zegler became a household name. Which begs the question, did The Simpsons really see this coming? Or are we all just desperate for a pattern?
That they can never be anything more than vacuous ninnies whose only goal is to look pretty, land a rich husband, and spend all day on the phone with their equally vacuous friends talking about how damn terrific it is to look pretty and have a rich husband.
Either way, the damage is done, and the internet is having way too much fun connecting the dots. It started with a press tour, a few interviews, a couple of eyebrow-raising quotes. Rachel Zegler wasn't trying to make headlines. At least, that's what her team would probably say now. But with every word she spoke, the foundation under Disney's shiny Snow White reboot started to crack, fast. Because instead of charming fans with behind-the-scenes magic or gushing about childhood fairy tales, she doubled down on something else entirely.
Our one effort to put a stop to this Lisa Lanhart thing has failed miserably. Gentlemen, we have to reinvent Malibu Stacy for the 90s.
Critique, defiance, disdain, some might even argue. She didn't want to be saved by a prince. She didn't think the original film was appropriate. She said it felt outdated. And depending on who you ask, that's when things really went south. The moment she dismissed the story that millions grew up with, the internet lit a fuse. And Rachel Zegler, intentionally or not, became the face of everything fans feared Disney was turning into. Political, preachy, detached from the very magic it was built on.
My name is Stacy, but you can call me...
I see exactly what you mean. This is a problem. But what do you expect me to do?
Change what she says. It's your company.
It didn't help that her interviews often came across as condescending. Not passionate, dismissive, not empowering, combative. Instead of reimagining a princess, she sounded like she was apologizing for even being cast as one. And for fans, that wasn't just a disappointment, it was a betrayal. The same company that once gave the world Belle and Ariel and Mulan now looked like it had hired someone who actively resented the very role she was playing. And that resentment, whether real or just perceived, became gasoline. Meme pages mocked her. YouTube commentators tore her apart. Late-night shows took subtle jabs. And amid all of it, Disney just froze. No big statement. No clear defense. It was as if the Mouse House had no idea how to handle the backlash. And the silence only made things worse. Because in that vacuum, one thing kept echoing louder and louder. What did she expect? What did Disney expect?
When I get married, I'm keeping my own name. That should probably be if I choose to get married.
People weren't just disappointed in Rachel. They were angry at the machine behind her, the casting, the creative decisions, the corporate detachment. And with the pressure mounting, Rachel Zegler stopped looking like the hero of her own story and started feeling like the cautionary tale. The internet had found its villain, or maybe, just maybe, its tragic lead. And the most ironic part? The entire meltdown mirrored a story arc from a 90s cartoon. A cartoon that's been quietly predicting cultural chaos for decades. Which brings us to the part that no one expected, but everyone's talking about now. Back in 1994, long before viral hashtags or franchise reboots, The Simpsons aired an episode called Lisa vs. Malibu Stacy. On the surface, it was just another quirky adventure for the precocious saxophone-playing middle child. But underneath the laughs and cartoon chaos, there was something eerily familiar about the plot. Lisa takes on the toy company behind her favorite doll, only to discover that the new, modern version of Malibu Stacy still spouts outdated, sexist catchphrases like, "Don't ask me, I'm just a girl," and "Let's bake cookies for the boys." Lisa's response? She builds her own doll, one that's strong, intelligent, progressive, one that isn't stuck in the 1950s. She calls her Lisa Lionheart, and she genuinely believes she's about to change the world. But instead of a movement, she gets mocked, brushed aside, outshined by a shinier, sexier new version of Malibu Stacy, same mold, just with a new hat.
They changed Malibu Stacy!
She is better than ever!
Wait, don't be fooled! She's just a regular Malibu Stacy with a stupid, cheap hat! She still embodies all the awful stereotypes she did before!
Now, fast forward nearly 30 years, a young actress is handed the lead in Disney's live-action reboot of Snow White. She's outspoken, confident, determined to bring something new to the story, something empowering. And when she speaks to the press, she doesn't lean into tradition. She critiques it, says the story felt wrong, dismisses the prince, disrupts the fantasy. And just like Lisa, she believes she's doing something important. And, just like Lisa, it doesn't land because the audience wasn't asking for a reinvention. They were asking for magic, nostalgia, that feeling of being swept away. And instead, they got what felt like a lecture, a warning, a message about what they were supposed to unlearn. And in the exact same way Lisa's message got drowned out by a doll with a new hat, Rachel's rebrand of Snow White got buried beneath memes, rage posts, and fans begging for something, anything, closer to what they remembered. What started as a cartoon metaphor suddenly didn't feel like fiction anymore. It felt like prophecy, and fans began stitching the pieces together. The tone, the backlash, the girl trying to modernize a classic and getting crushed by the weight of it. The old Simpsons episode wasn't just eerily similar, it was practically a template, only this time there were no punchlines, just headlines. Once the internet smelled a pattern, it didn't take long for the theory to explode. TikTok went wild. Threads popped up on Reddit with episode clips side by side with Rachel's interviews. Zoom-ins on Lisa's face next to Zegler's press tour smirks. Audio overlays with Malibu Stacy chirping her cringy one-liners while Rachel shaded Disney's original script.
Well, I guess you can't beat big business. There's just no room for the little guy.
At first, it was a meme. Then it started to feel deliberate. Fan captions practically wrote themselves. They warned us in 1994. Simpsons prophecy strikes again. Rachel Zegler is Lisa Lionheart, but the world just wanted a new hat. And the more people watched, the harder it was to deny the similarities. The internet wasn't just trolling anymore. It was dissecting the downfall like a pop culture crime scene. And honestly, the timing couldn't have been worse. Rachel was already fighting an uphill battle with Disney's PR machine barely holding it together. The last thing she needed was an animated flashback framing her as the misunderstood cartoon feminist no one wanted to hear from. But that's exactly what she became. A meme, a metaphor, a character in someone else's joke. And yet, behind the snark and viral edits, there was something deeper. Fans weren't just mocking Rachel, they were mourning something. That old school Disney feeling. The comfort of a princess story that didn't have to defend itself. The trust that when you sat down to watch Snow White, you'd escape, not debate. And when Rachel broke that illusion, the pushback wasn't just against her. It was against the idea that childhood magic now came with footnotes. The Simpsons had always been satire. But this time, the satire caught up to reality, and fans weren't laughing anymore, because the same people who cheered for Lisa in 1994 now found themselves siding with Malibu Stacy, not because they liked her better, but because she wasn't trying to change them. And Rachel? She became the face of change no one asked for. Or worse, the warning they all ignored. Behind the scenes, you could almost hear the panic. Disney, once the master of controlling narratives, suddenly found itself in unfamiliar territory, being mocked by its own fans. Not just for the film, not just for the casting, but for the silence.
Trust in yourself and you can achieve anything. You know, if we get through to just that one little girl, it'll all be worth it.
Yes, particularly if that little girl happens to pay $46,000 for that doll.
What?
Oh, nothing. Kudos to you, Lisa.
For standing by while the lead of a billion-dollar reboot casually dismantled the very story she was supposed to sell. And now, with the Simpsons theory gaining traction, even the satire felt like a jab at their leadership, because this wasn't just about Rachel anymore. It was about Disney's inability to read the room. The internet was spinning, fast. Headlines were eating each other. Zegler mocked again. Simpsons clip goes viral. Disney braces for more backlash. And all the while, Disney said nothing, which made everything louder. Some insiders allegedly claimed there were emergency meetings, that execs were scrambling for a new strategy. That one Disney rep even floated the idea of scrubbing Zegler from the promotional cycle entirely. Whether that's true or not, the silence did enough damage, because when fans don't get answers, they fill in the blanks. And this time, they had decades of Simpsons satire to pull from. And that's when the theory took a darker turn. Because if The Simpsons predicted the downfall, who else knew this was coming? Was Rachel set up to fail? Was she cast to check a box, then left to fend for herself when the internet turned? The more people asked, the more suspicious it all seemed. Disney had weathered plenty of backlash before, but this was different. It wasn't about politics or storytelling choices. It was about a complete disconnect from the people who used to trust them blindly. And Rachel, caught in the crossfire, couldn't escape the symbolism. She was no longer just an actress. She was a punchline in a cartoon that aired before she was born. A meme Disney couldn't control, a symbol of a new generation trying to rewrite the rules and running straight into the walls the old ones left behind. Because in the end, it wasn't Lisa Lionheart who flopped. It was the world that wasn't ready for her.
They cannot keep making dolls like this. Something has to be done.
Lisa, ordinarily I'd say you should stand up for what you believe in, but you've been doing that an awful lot lately.
And some fans believe that's the real prediction. It's easy to look at all of this and call it coincidence. Just another internet rabbit hole fueled by too much time and not enough context. But then you start connecting the dots, and it stops feeling like parody and starts feeling like a blueprint. Because this isn't the first time The Simpsons skewered Hollywood's obsession with rebooting the past. And it's definitely not the first time a woman speaking up in the industry got labeled difficult, ungrateful, or out of touch. But what's hitting different here is how familiar it all feels. A modern heroine trying to challenge the norm. A media machine unable or unwilling to support her. A legacy brand crumbling under the pressure of progress it claims to champion. The Simpsons didn't just hint at Rachel's arc, they mapped it, move for move. The bold stance, the cultural backlash, the bitter taste of doing everything right and still losing the room, and that raises a bigger question. If this was all just satire back then, why is it reality now? Some viewers say it's because the entertainment world hasn't evolved. It's stuck in loops, princess stories rewritten, public figures weaponized, female leads propped up and torn down on cue. Rachel's downfall wasn't about one film or one statement. It was about timing, about the illusion of change versus the reality of control. And when that illusion shattered, she wasn't just blamed for it, she embodied it. Meanwhile, Disney's silence only added fuel to the theory. Because if they really stood behind Rachel, why did they suddenly stop featuring her? Why was her presence in trailers reduced? Why did official accounts start posting more about costumes than cast? Fans noticed. Fans always notice. And maybe the most haunting part is that none of this feels new. It feels recycled. From the satirical script of a cartoon made in the 90s. From a storyline meant to make us laugh. But now, it's making people wonder if this entire industry is stuck in a rerun.
Is the remarkably sexist drivel spouted by Malibu Stacy intentional, or is it just a horrible mistake?
And if that's the case, maybe Rachel never stood a chance. By this point, the Rachel Zegler saga had taken on a life of its own, and if her critics were loud before, now they were thunderous. Every red carpet appearance was scrutinized. Every silence was weaponized. If she looked tired, they said she was cracking. If she smiled too wide, they called it fake. No matter what she did, the narrative had already been set, and ironically, it wasn't by her. It was by a 30-year-old cartoon. Because once people started framing her story through the lens of The Simpsons, it became impossible to watch it unfold without déjà vu. Even Rachel's defenders couldn't ignore the eerie symmetry. A young woman trying to speak truth. a corporation shrugging in the background, an audience caught between loyalty to the past and discomfort with the present. It wasn't just a backlash anymore, it was a cycle. And the thing about cycles, they always need a scapegoat. For some, that scapegoat became Rachel. For others, it was Disney. But in both cases, the pattern was the same. Build someone up, tear them down, then pretend it was all just the natural course of things. But there was nothing natural about this. It was engineered, marketed, packaged as progress, then punished for being too progressive. Fans started asking deeper questions. Was Rachel ever meant to succeed? Or was she cast to take the fall from the very beginning? To shield the studio from criticism while absorbing the hits herself? Because when the backlash hit, it wasn't Disney issuing apologies. It was Rachel on damage control, Rachel clarifying, Rachel explaining, and each time she looked a little more exhausted, a little more cornered, and all the while, the Simpsons clips kept circulating. Lisa's disappointment, her clarity, the way her voice was drowned out by a shallow rebrand. It stopped being funny. It started feeling cruel. Because what happens when the world demands a modern princess, then destroys her for trying to be one? That's the part the Simpsons didn't predict. Or maybe they did, and we just didn't get the joke. Somewhere in the swirl of backlash, theories, and internet chaos, the original question got lost. What was Rachel Zegler actually trying to do? Strip away the noise, the memes, the mashed up Simpsons edits, and what you find is a young woman in her 20s, thrown into a role that came with decades of baggage. A role once defined by singing animals, naive charm, and a damsel waiting to be rescued. She didn't want to repeat that. She wanted to evolve it. And that's what scared people. Because when a character like Snow White changes, so does everything she represents. Innocence, obedience, the fantasy of being chosen. And when Rachel said she didn't relate to that version of femininity, it felt like a rejection, not just of the film, but of the people who still held it close. That's the problem with nostalgia. It doesn't like to be questioned. It doesn't care if something was flawed or outdated. It only cares that it made you feel safe. So when Rachel opened her mouth, some fans didn't hear progress. They heard judgment. And once that switch flipped, there was no turning it off. Even when she tried to clarify, even when she softened her tone, even when she posted selfies smiling through the chaos, it didn't matter. The audience had made up its mind, and in the background, that Simpsons episode became more than a cartoon. It became a prophecy people wanted to believe, because if the downfall was inevitable, if it had already been predicted, then maybe no one had to take responsibility for it. Not the studio, not the critics, not even the fans. That's what makes this entire saga feel so sinister. It's not just that Rachel's story mirrored a fictional one. It's that people use that fiction to justify their outrage, to mock her without guilt, to say, well, it's not our fault. It's just the way it always goes. But there's a difference between prediction and permission. And somewhere along the way, those lines blurred.
They changed Malibu Stacy!
She is better than ever.
Wait, don't be fooled. She's just a regular Malibu Stacy with a stupid cheap hat.
By now, Rachel Zegler isn't just a name trending online. She's a cultural flashpoint, a symbol of what happens when progress runs headfirst into nostalgia, and neither side is willing to budge. She was supposed to be Disney's evolution, bold, independent, unafraid to speak her mind. But in the end, she became something else entirely, a case study, a cautionary tale. A reminder that even now, in the age of empowerment, the world still punishes women for being too loud, too opinionated, too different, and yet there's something even darker beneath the surface. Something no one's really saying out loud. It's this. Rachel Zegler didn't fail because she changed Snow White. She failed because the world wasn't ready to admit it didn't want change. It wanted the illusion of it, the PR sparkle, the headlines that say reinvented while quietly preserving the status quo. But Rachel didn't play along. She said the quiet part out loud, and in doing so, she forced people to confront their own expectations, their own discomfort. That's why they turned on her. And the fact that a decades-old Simpsons episode somehow captures that exact dynamic, it's not just eerie, it's infuriating, because it shows we've been here before. We've laughed at this before. We've watched fictional characters struggle with the same issues, and still, nothing changes. The people in power, they keep selling reinvention while refusing to support the people doing the reinventing. The fans, they keep begging for originality until it doesn't look like what they remember. And the Rachel Zeglers of the world, they get caught in the middle, left to apologize for being exactly what the industry told them to be. So maybe the Simpsons didn't predict Rachel's downfall. Maybe they predicted ours. And maybe that's what makes this whole thing so hard to watch. So now we're left with a cartoon from 1994 echoing louder than anything Disney's PR team could have written. A young woman who tried to reshape a fairy tale, only to become a villain in someone else's narrative, and an industry that keeps handing women the mic, only to snatch it away the moment their voice disrupts the script. Rachel Zegler didn't crash because she was wrong. She crashed because she was unprotected, because the same studio that cast her didn't shield her, because the audience that begged for new voices wasn't ready to listen, and because we've seen this story before, maybe not in real life, but on a yellow-skinned cartoon girl named Lisa screaming into the void. That's what makes this so devastating. It wasn't just backlash, it was déjà vu, a loop we didn't break, a warning we didn't hear. And whether you love Rachel or can't stand her, whether you agree with her takes or cringe at every interview, there's no denying the pattern. The collapse wasn't a surprise, it was a system failure. And the Simpsons? They didn't create that system, they just sketched it in ink. So was it a joke? A coincidence? Or did the Simpsons truly predict Rachel Zegler's career crash? You tell me, was she unfairly attacked? Or was she never the right fit for the role in the first place? Did the Simpsons really call it? Or are we just seeing what we want to see? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if this made you pause for even a second, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories Hollywood definitely didn't predict. The next video on your screen is waiting, and you won't believe what happened next. Click now.